David was a scientist who loved exploring places that no one had ever visited before. He enjoyed discovering new things about nature and the world around him. One summer, he planned a trip deep into a large green forest. This forest was very quiet and mysterious. Not many people had gone inside because it was far from cities and roads. David wanted to learn about the plants and animals living there. On the first day of his trip, David walked carefully through the trees. The sun shone through the leaves and made patterns on the ground. Birds sang softly, and sometimes small animals moved quickly between the bushes. David felt peaceful but also excited. He carried his backpack with food, water, and tools to help him study the forest. After a few hours of walking, David saw something strange. Behind a thick bush, there was a woman standing still. She did not look like anyone he had met before. Her skin had a soft, pale glow, and her eyes were big and bright. Her hair was long but shimmered in colors he could not name. She wore clothes, made from leaves and smooth materials that looked different from what humans usually wear. David stopped and looked at her carefully. He did not say anything at first because he was not sure if she was dangerous or friendly. His face showed his surprise and a bit of fear. His eyes showed anger too, but it was not anger at her personally. It was anger born from shock and confusion. He did not know what she was or why she was in the forest. The woman noticed David's expression and felt afraid. Her lips trembled as she quietly asked, "Human, why are you looking at me with anger?" Her voice was soft but full of worry. She did not understand why David's face looked like that. She was scared because she thought he might hurt her. David took a deep breath to calm himself. He knew he should not be angry. He was just shocked to see someone so different. He realized the anger on his face was more about the unknown than the woman herself. Slowly, he lowered his hands and tried to smile gently. He wanted to show her that he meant no harm. "Sorry," David said in a calm voice. "I didn't mean to scare you. I have never seen anyone like you before." His words were slow and careful. He wanted her to know he was curious, not angry. The woman looked at David with hope. She moved closer but kept some distance just in case. "My name is Lyra," she said softly. "I live here with my people. We are very careful not to be seen by humans." Her eyes searched David's face for trust. David nodded. He wanted to learn more, but also respected her fear. "I am David. I came here to study the forest. I did not mean to find you or your people." He looked around the forest, then back at Lyra. "I promise I won't tell anyone about you." Lyra relaxed a little but still watched him carefully. Many humans have come before and did not understand us. They wanted to take our home or capture us. She looked sad. "That is why we hide." David felt sorry for her. He realized that sometimes people can be cruel when they don't understand things. He thought about how many times humans had hurt nature and each other because of fear and anger. Now he understood that his own anger was part of that problem. It was fear showing in a wrong way. For the rest of the day, David and Lyra stayed near each other but did not speak much. They tried to find ways to communicate without words. Lyra showed him some plants and how her people used them for food and medicine. David listened and watched carefully. He learned a little about her world and felt respect growing inside him. As the sun began to set, David realized it was time to go back to his camp. He did not want to leave Lyra alone, but he promised to return the next day. "I want to learn more about your people," he said softly. Lyra nodded and smiled slightly, feeling a small hope for friendship. That night, David thought a lot about what had happened. He understood that meeting Lyra was the start of something important. He wanted to leave his anger behind and open his heart to new things. He knew it would be difficult to explain this to others, but he was ready to protect Lyra and her people. David's Discovery was more than just a scientific find. It was a chance to understand someone very different, and maybe change how humans think about the unknown. He was ready for this journey, no matter where it would take him. The next morning, David woke up early with a mix of excitement and nervousness. He thought about Lyra and the strange but kind moment they had shared the day before. He wanted to learn more about her and her people, but he also knew he had to be careful. Lyra had told him her people hid from humans because they were afraid. David understood that trust would take time. He packed his things quietly and left his small camp. The forest was calm and fresh with morning light. Birds chirped, and the cool breeze made the leaves dance gently. David walked slowly, hoping to find Lyra again. After a while, near a small stream, he saw her sitting quietly on a large stone. She looked peaceful but alert. Lyra stood up when she saw him. "You came back," she said softly, a little surprised but glad. David smiled. "I promised I would. I want to understand your world, Lyra." At first, they tried to talk, but the language between them was very different. Lyra spoke softly in her own words, and David tried to repeat sounds, but they could not fully understand each other. Instead of giving up, they started using their hands, pointing and making simple signs. This made the meeting more interesting, because it felt like a puzzle they were solving together. Lyra showed David a plant with bright red flowers. She pointed to her lips, then to the flowers, and made a gentle chewing motion. David understood she meant the plant was edible or used for food. He carefully picked a small leaf and tasted it. It was a little sweet and fresh. David then showed her how to use a small tool to make a mark on a leaf. Lyra laughed softly, happy to learn something new. She showed David other plants, explaining by signs which were safe and which were not. David realized how much knowledge she had about the forest, knowledge that people like him did not have. They spent many hours together walking slowly through the trees. Lyra pointed out how her people used different parts of plants for medicine, food, or shelter. David took notes in his small notebook, fascinated by everything he was learning. As they spent time together, David's feelings changed. The anger he had felt before was gone. Instead, he felt respect and even friendship growing. He understood that Lyra was not strange or scary. She was simply different. She had a deep connection to the forest and a way of life that was peaceful and careful. Lyra also began to trust David more. She saw that he was not like the humans who had hurt her people before. She felt safe with him, even though she still kept a small distance. Sometimes she looked at him with curiosity, wondering about his world beyond the trees. One moment stood out when David found a small injured bird on the ground. The bird had a hurt wing and could not fly. David gently picked it up and showed it to Lyra. She nodded and pointed to the plants nearby. Together, they made a soft bandage from leaves and tied it around the bird's wing. This simple act of caring for the bird brought them closer. They smiled, and the fear in Lyra's eyes softened. David realized that kindness and care were the same in both their worlds. As the sun began to lower, David knew it was time to return to his camp. He did not want to leave, but he promised Lyra he would come back again. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "I will come again." Lyra nodded and walked away slowly, disappearing between the trees. David watched her go, feeling a mix of happiness and concern. He knew their friendship was fragile. If others found out, Lyra and her people could be in danger. Back at his camp, David thought deeply about what he had learned. He understood that many people did not respect the unknown or different. Fear often caused anger and hurt, just like it had in his first moment with Lyra. But he wanted to be different. He wanted to protect the forest and its hidden people. David spent the evening writing in his notebook, drawing pictures of the plants and the bird they had helped. He made a plan to keep Lyra's location secret and to learn as much as he could without causing harm. That night, David felt hopeful. He knew this journey would not be easy, but it was important. He had found something special in the forest. A new friendship, a new world to understand, and a new reason to fight for kindness and respect. David returned to the forest every day to meet Lyra. Their connection grew stronger, and they started to understand each other better. Words were still hard, but they found ways to share feelings through gestures, expressions, and simple drawings. David learned more about Lyra's life, and Lyra began to trust David with small parts of her story. Lyra's people had lived in the forest for many generations. They cared deeply about nature and tried to live in balance with the plants, animals, and the earth. David noticed how respectful Lyra was toward every living thing. She showed him how her people took only what they needed and never wasted anything. This was very different from how humans often lived, taking more than they needed and sometimes harming the environment. One day, as they walked through a quiet part of the forest, Lyra stopped and looked around carefully. She told David through signs that some humans were coming closer to her home. David felt a sudden worry. He knew that if others found Lyra or her people, it could be dangerous for them. Lyra's eyes showed fear and sadness, and David promised, silently, that he would do everything he could to protect her. David's mind was full of questions. How could he keep Lyra safe? How could he help her people without bringing trouble? He knew this was not just about friendship anymore. It was about trust and responsibility. He realized that the anger he had once felt was now replaced by a powerful desire to protect and defend. Over time, David shared more about his own world. He drew pictures of cities, machines, and other humans. Lyra watched with wide eyes, sometimes surprised and sometimes confused. She did not fully understand David's world, but she could see that it was different from hers in many ways. Sometimes she looked sad when she thought about how humans treated nature. David began to think deeply about his own people's actions. He had studied science and nature, but he had never truly seen the damage humans caused until now. He felt a strong need to change, not just for Lyra's people, but for all the earth. He promised himself that he would use his knowledge to help protect the environment and teach others to respect nature. Lyra taught David many things, too. She showed him how her people used plants for healing and food. She pointed out hidden signs in the forest that humans might miss. She even showed him a secret path that led to a beautiful waterfall where her people went to feel peace and connect with nature. One afternoon, they sat by the waterfall and rested. David looked at Lyra and saw how brave and strong she was, even though she had to hide from most humans. He admired her courage and wisdom. Lyra smiled gently and touched David's hand, a silent way of showing friendship and trust. Their time together was not always easy. Sometimes Lyra would become quiet and distant, thinking about the dangers around her. David would feel helpless, but always tried to be there for her. They learned to support each other, even when words were not enough. David also began to teach Lyra some words from his language. He showed her simple greetings and phrases. Lyra was a quick learner, and soon she could say hello and thank you. This made David happy because it meant they could connect even more. Despite their growing friendship, the threat of discovery was always near. One day, David heard voices from other humans not far from where Lyra lived. He knew he had to warn her quickly. He ran through the forest and found Lyra preparing to move her people to a safer place. David helped her by carrying supplies and guiding the way. Together, they moved through the forest quietly, avoiding the humans. This moment showed David how serious the danger was and how much he cared for Lyra's safety. After they found a new hiding place, David and Lyra rested and talked about the future. Lyra was scared but hopeful because she had David's support. David promised to protect her and her people no matter what. Their friendship had grown into something powerful, a bond of trust and understanding between two very different worlds. David knew that this was just the beginning of a long journey to help and protect Lyra and her people. He felt proud that he had changed. His anger was gone, replaced by hope, respect, and love for the forest and its hidden people. David was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that together they could overcome fear and find peace. David and Lyra's bond grew stronger with each passing day. However, their peaceful time together was not meant to last forever. One morning, David woke up to loud noises in the forest. Voices shouted and branches cracked as more people moved through the trees. David's heart raced. He knew the others had come to find Lyra and her people. Lyra was scared. She looked to David for help. Her eyes showed fear, but also trust. She knew he wanted to protect her, and she hoped he could keep her safe. David promised her silently that he would do everything in his power to stop the danger. The humans who entered the forest were not kind explorers. They were a group of men and women with machines, cameras, and tools. They wanted to capture or study the unknown. David recognized some of them from his own world, people who didn't understand the importance of respect or kindness toward new discoveries. David knew he had to act fast. He quickly told Lyra to gather her people and move deeper into the forest where the machines could not reach. Lyra and her group hurried, but the humans were following closely behind. David tried to block their path and talk to them, but the strangers ignored his warnings. David's anger flared up. It was no longer confusion or fear. Now it was a fierce desire to protect. He shouted at the humans to stop, to respect Lyra and her people. But his voice was lost among their machines and loud voices. David felt frustrated and powerless, but he did not give up. Lyra's people ran quietly through the forest, trying to avoid the noise and the danger. David stayed behind to slow the humans down. He used the knowledge he had learned about the forest to make traps and obstacles. Branches were tied to fall across paths, and thorny bushes were placed where they could hurt if stepped on. These small acts gave Lyra's people more time to escape safely. As the chase continued, David felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He was no longer just a curious scientist. He was a protector, a friend, and a guardian. The anger inside him was fierce but controlled. He used it to fight for what was right. After several hours, the humans began to tire and lose their way. The forest was too wild and confusing for machines. They decided to stop and camp near the edge, hoping to find another way in the next day. David saw this as a chance to warn Lyra and her people. David returned to the new hiding place where Lyra was resting. He told her about the humans and their camp. Lyra's face showed worry, but also relief that David was there. They planned together to keep the community safe. David realized that the forest was not just a home for Lyra's people, but a sanctuary that must be protected. He decided to stay near them, ready to help whenever danger came. Lyra welcomed his presence. She knew that David was different from others. He cared deeply and fought for them. In the days that followed, David helped teach Lyra's people how to stay hidden. He shared ideas about watching for signs of danger and moving quickly and quietly. Lyra and her community began to trust David even more. They saw him as a true friend. Despite the danger, David and Lyra found moments of peace. They continued to explore the forest, sharing stories and dreams. David showed Lyra pictures of his world, and Lyra showed David secret places where the forest seemed magical and alive. Their friendship became a symbol of hope, a way to bridge two worlds that often did not understand each other. David knew that protecting Lyra and her people was not just about hiding, but about teaching respect for all life. One evening, as the sun set behind the trees, David and Lyra sat together quietly. They watched the colors of the sky change from orange to deep blue. Lyra took David's hand. a simple but powerful gesture. It said more than words could. David looked at her and knew that their fight was not over. The humans outside the forest were still a threat, but together they could face the future with courage and kindness. David felt ready for the challenges ahead. He had learned that anger could become strength when used to protect what is good and true. And most importantly, he understood that trust and friendship could change even the hardest hearts. After the danger had passed for a while, David and Lyra's friendship grew even stronger. The days were filled with learning and sharing, and both felt hope for the future. But deep down, they knew that the world outside the forest was still uncertain and sometimes cruel. Still, they believed that with trust and kindness, they could make a difference. David spent many nights thinking about what he could do to help Lyra's people live safely. He knew that hiding forever was not a good solution. Lyra and her community deserved to live freely and without fear. But the world was not ready to accept them yet. So, David made a plan to protect their secret while teaching others the importance of respect and care for all living things. David returned to the nearby city to share what he had learned with a few trusted friends. These friends were scientists and environmentalists who cared deeply about protecting nature. David told them about Lyra and her people, but he asked them to keep it a secret for now. He wanted to create a group that would help protect the forest and the hidden community. Together, they started working on ways to protect the forest from harm. They wrote reports, took photos of the beautiful plants and animals, and spoke to local leaders about the importance of preserving the land. Slowly, David saw a small change happening. More people began to understand that nature and all its creatures needed respect and protection. Back in the forest, David and Lyra continued their quiet life. They would meet by the waterfall, exploring the beauty of the forest and sharing stories. Lyra taught David more about her people's traditions, their songs, and their connection to the earth. David shared stories about human kindness and hope. They found comfort in each other's company. One day, Lyra showed David a special tree. It was very old and tall, with roots that seemed to hold the whole forest together. She explained, using signs and simple words, that this tree was very important. To her people, it was a symbol of their strength and history. David felt a deep respect for the tree and for Lyra's people. David realized that his life had changed completely since meeting Lyra. He was no longer just a scientist who studied plants and animals. He had become a protector and a friend. The mega anger he once felt had disappeared, replaced by understanding and love. As time passed, David and Lyra faced challenges, but they never gave up. They knew that the world outside would not change overnight, but every small step counted. They hoped that one day, humans and Lyra's people could live together peacefully, learning from each other and sharing the same world. One evening, as the sky turned pink and purple, David and Lyra sat together and watched the stars appear. Lyra smiled softly and said, "Thank you, David." It was a simple sentence, but it meant everything. David smiled back, knowing that this friendship was one of the greatest gifts he had ever received. Their story was not just about two people from different worlds. It was about the power of kindness, respect, and hope. It showed that even when fear and anger try to divide us, trust and friendship can bring us together. David promised himself to keep protecting Lyra and her people for as long as he could, and he hoped that someday the world would be ready to welcome them without fear or anger. For now they lived in the quiet forest, surrounded by nature's beauty and the strength of their friendship. And in that peaceful place, they found a new beginning, a beginning filled with hope, respect, and love.